Hey guys, let's just get set up here. My little PowerPointy thing going on here. Hi, and thank you for tuning in again. My name is Joan Porte. I am a karmic or evolutionary astrologer. And that means that I look at your chart based on what you've brought in. Right? So I look at past life influences, how that is in your subconscious. And then I try to show you how it's important to take the benefits of what you've had in a previous life, the talents, the benefits that you have, the personality traits that you appreciate, and then get rid of the negative, get rid of stuff that's holding you back, stuff that no longer works. Because how do we move on, right? How do we evolve as people if we are just staying stuck and doing the same old things over and over and over again, so that we're not progressing, right? Why bother? Why bother reincarnating and going through all that hassle of life is if you're just going to keep doing the same things and not progress and not move, right? So that's the whole key of evolutionary astrology. So today we're going to look at the 8th house. I'm very interested in the water houses, right? Because the water houses, those that are opened by water signs, 4, 8, and 12, are extremely, just use the word karmic, but they connect us to a deeper level, okay? And so by understanding these and using the transits to each of these houses, you can go deeper. You can go as deeply as you want. You can really get into the muck and the mire of your astrology chart to make change. Okay, so let's start with the 8th house. This is me. If you want to reach me, jonesastrology@joanporte.com is the best email. And my website is joanporte.com. As I've said before, has nothing to do with vanity. I just have a good techie who says, I think it would be easier if you do it this way. And I'm like, okay, I'm all about easy technology. So the role of the houses, I think they're somewhat overlooked. I mean, when you do a chart, you look up a chart, you say, oh, there's 12 houses, each piece of a pie, blah, 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 blah. But we don't realize that the energy that these houses contain are monumental. They're the building blocks. They're what makes astrology work. And by knowing how, when the planets shift from house to house to house, right, how that affects you and how you can do work, right? You don't want to fear these transits. I hate when people say, oh, Pluto's in my 6th house, I'm going to get sick. No, it's showing you where you can make changes to be better, to be healthier, to be stronger. It's not gloom and doom. It's not pointing fingers and saying, this is what's going to happen to you. It's free will and growth and change. So we know that somewhere around the ancient Sumerian time, ancient Babylonian time, 2,000 plus years, we have evidence that they used a house-based circle for astrology. Now, was it used earlier? Did they swipe it from some civilization that doesn't exist? We don't know, but we know that this building block, these 12 houses, have been around for a while. Now, over the years, the houses have changed a bit. So, for instance, and I like to use the 9th house here, the 9th house has now been sort of assigned rulership domain over the internet. Well, obviously, when 2,000 years ago, the Sumerians didn't have the internet. But now we know, because the ninth house deals with growth and foreign travel and intermingling and reaching people, publishing and broadcasting, that the ninth house should have domain over the internet. So it is adapted a bit more. If you go back to medieval times, the 12th house was a very, what they called, malefic house, as was the ninth house, because travel was so dangerous that, watch for things that will happen on the road. Now we look at the ninth house as growth and advancement, because we don't have burglars waiting on the side of the road. You can't fall off your horse in some remote place and die for lack of care. We have different modes of transportation. The 12th house was given domain over childbirth, which was, what had a 60% mortality rate. So it was a malefic house. And today we look at it as connection to source, to karma, to the subconscious, but we've taken out the more malefic aspects. Now, every house is a happy place for some sign or some planet, okay? It's a place that the energy in that house directly correlates to the energy of that sign of that planet. And it's a symbiotic, it's a happy relationship. It's where this house or this planet and this sign feels most comfortable. So for the first house, which is the house of personality, how I present myself, right? Here I am. It is the house where Mars and Aries will feel most comfortable. Energy connects. Mars and Aries is about me, my personality. It is a fire sign, a masculine sign. It's like, here I am. This is who I am. I'm going to take my life in this direction. So the first house is a Mars Aries compatible house. Second house likes Venus and Taurus energy. Venus does control the purse strings of the zodiac, but Taurus is a very earthy, basic, my goods, my house, the shelter from the storm. It's a very, very earthy, primal kind of house. And because it deals with our stuff, as George Carlin used to say, it's connected to value and self-worth. I feel more valuable because I have a mansion, right? I feel more valuable when I'm outdoing the Joneses, or, hey, I'm happy with my cottage. I don't need all that stuff. That's how we relate to our value connected to worth. This is the house where you might see hoarding issues if you have someone with a very debilitated second house, or someone who's always trying to impress everybody with the latest evidence of their wonder and their wealth and their status. This is all second house Venus Taurus influence. The third house, Mercury, Gemini, socialization, education, right? It's the communicator. Gemini, Mercury used to carry the messages from the gods to the mortals, this level of interchange of money and communications and ideas. This is a very, very communication, education on a very primal level. The fourth house is the house of roots and home, and it is the first of these water houses. It's a house that is naturally opened by Moonchild or Cancer, ruled by the moon, very emotional, very mother, and it's the house where we sort of enter the zodiac. It's very primal. It's very like who I am at my most bare naked, right? It's roots, who we are, our mother, our families, the family we're born into, the family we create. Very, very primal in that sense. The fifth house is creativity, sexuality, children, right? It vibrates to the energy of the sun. It vibrates to the energy of Leo, right? The sign, this is, I'm the king of the jungle. I'm the center of the universe. It's where we put ourselves out there. It's where we are most creative, where we stand out in some way. So if you see someone with a very debilitated fifth house, they may be socially awkward. They may allow people to, steal their thunder as they sort of curl up. They may not feel that they have anything to contribute. They have no voice. The sixth house is another very earthy house. It is the domain of Virgo and its ruler Vesta. I have never used Mercury as the ruler of Virgo. I'm sorry, it just makes no sense to me. I know this is what the ancients did. I know this is still considered, something people do. That's fine. But I don't see it. I see Vesta, the hearth's fire, the burning heart's desire, most equate with Virgo, because Virgo is the worker bee. Virgo puts its head down and says, this is what I'm going to do. This is the rulership over my domain. I'm taking care of my body. I'm taking care of my surrounding area. I'm tilling my soil. So it's a very, very, very centered in earth and body kind of thing. The seventh house is where we go again to Venus and Libra. Venus does double duty. Venus rules both Libra and Taurus. I hope someday we will find the correct ruler of Taurus. I think Venus, like in the old days, Mars ruled both Pluto and Aries, both Scorpio and Aries before we found Pluto. A lot of planets did double duty till we found those larger other planets. I think Venus works best with Libra. I just think the energy is there. So I hope Taurus finds a ruler that fits a little better. But partnership, relationship, this is the relating aspect of the very feminine sign of, or very feminine planet of Venus and the sign of Libra. My partner, my business partner, my marital partner, my social gang, right? These people that are closest to me. The eighth house, which we will discuss today, is where Pluto and Scorpio find the most positive energy for them. It is death, rebirth, right? It's another of the water houses. It's the second of the water houses. Fourth is where we come in. Eighth is where we connect with the other side. It is death. It is regeneration. It is re-empowerment. It is a house that frightens people because you say death and they, if you think of it as that regenerative energy and connecting with those who are in spirit and the power that that brings, that's a much more positive way to look at the eighth house. Ninth house, Jupiter in Sag, and I mentioned this earlier, growth, interchange, right? Connection with foreign people, learning other new ways of doing things, putting yourself out there, internet, broadcasting, publishing, all of these things are ninth. The 10th house is the house of Saturn, Capricorn, patriarchy, authority, rules. Saturn gets a really bad rap. But Saturn basically says, hey, you know what, folks? You live in a linear society. You live in physical space and time. This is my domain, right? It used to be society. It is lifestyle. It is career. It's, am I a good citizen? Do I pay my taxes? Or do I, sort of go the anarchist way? That's all the domain of the 10th house. It vibrates most to the energy of Saturn and Capricorn. In the 11th house is where we do group and social activities, but with a cause. It's the house of Uranus and Aquarius. It's like future thinking. How do I want society to be? Right? I'm going to band together with these people to make these changes. And remember, astrology doesn't say all of this is good and wonderful. You can decide that you want to further the cause of some hideous group, the KKK, right? And that is your 11th house goal, Not a great idea. It would be nicer if you joined a group that bettered society, but it doesn't discriminate is what I'm saying. That's where free will comes in. So you could have a very debilitated 11th house and think that you're going to change the world by doing something absolutely terrible. That's your decision. But the 11th house is where we come together for this type of activity. 12th house, Neptune in Pisces, final water house. It's where we connect to source, to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it. It's the house of spirit. It's the house of, someone said to me once, it holds the karma. And remember, karma is not good or bad. And so it's what it is. It's energy that you put out. But it holds that subconscious. It holds the universal collective energy. So it's very, very nebulous. It's very unearthly, very watery, very spiritual kind of house. So as I said, I'm focusing on these water houses because that is the essence of this going deeper. Now, the 8th house, this house of dread, I wrote, I tell you, people freak out when I say, something's transiting the 8th house. Who's going to die? How I'm going to die. And it can, in some cases, indicate that a life is ending. But 99.99% of the time, what it is doing is pointing to how you can regenerate, how you can come, to a better you, how you can die to the old self. To the ancients, this is where we went into the underworld, right? And it is our connection to the other side. This is where, if I do a chart, I see Neptune there. I see, Neptune and Mercury there. I'm like, okay, you either have the ability to have great instincts, is psychic, intuitive, or how many times has grandma come to visit you, kind of thing. I once did a chart of a guy who his wife did it for him. I don't believe in any of this stuff. I'm a business person, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, you have great gut instincts at work. You really know. And he's like, well, yes, of course. Well, he had a very strong 8th house. He chose to use it, to go into business, which is fine. But he still had that instinctive gut instinct. That's 8th house. Another reason, by the way, the ancients were not fond of the 8th house, because it was the underworld, is because if you're looking at a chart, and I have one, I think I moved the thing accidentally. There's a chart. This is a progress chart. I'll talk about this in a minute. But if you look at the houses here, the 7th house is directly across from the 1st house. The 8th house is like one notch up. You cannot see the ascendant. The ancients loved the ascendant. They were very big on the ascendant because it was sun. No, they weren't too big on sun signs. I can't do my work when the sun is out. I'm not too thrilled with the sun. I want to see the stars. But that ascendant, that personality was very important to them. You can't see the ascendant from the 8th house. That made it a more malefic house. So this is the house of the occult. It is the house, yes, in some cases of anguish, of actual physical death. It can also be the house where you lose and gain financially. It is the house of other people's money. I had a guy, I saw it coming, he wouldn't listen to me. He had Saturn transiting. He had inherited a lot of money from his father. He was misusing it. So when Saturn, the patriarchal taskmaster, went through that 8th house, he pretty much lost everything, just through errors, through not listening, through whatever. But, it is the house of financial gain through inheritance, other people's money, insurance, right? It's when I first started to learn astrology, they said it's the house of death, dying, rebirth, goods of the dead. And I was like, goods of the dead? Oh, it's insurance, it's inheritance, right? So it's where we can resurrect. It's where we can rebirth. It's all about second chances. This is a good thing. And I know I'm a Scorpio. I love Pluto. I wrote a 22-page report, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade or something on Pluto. I wish I had kept it. I've just been enamored with Pluto. It is not bad, you know. Now, some astrologers look to the 8th house as dealing with sexuality. And I have to tell you, that never kind of worked. To me, the 5th house is better. And I took a class a while ago, and the teacher addressed this. And she said, you know, that was written, the first evidence we saw about the 8th house having anything to do with sex and sexuality was written in 1910. And it was an article suggested that this is a possibility because Scorpio, which again loves the 8th house, it's the house it naturally vibrates to, does deal in medical astrology with genitalia and the reproductive system. Someone, you know, sort of said, well, we need to connect, you know, sexuality, 8th house. You know, I don't see it. I've played with it. It doesn't work for me. I leave sexuality in the 5th house, but that's just an option. I use the 8th house mostly for regenerative powers. Yes, there can be a loss. I mean, Pluto going through your 8th house, you may lose an elderly parent or, you know, grandma or whatever. It can happen. Doesn't always happen. It can happen. But that's life, right? That's the circle of life. I like to go deeper into the planets. I like to say this is how you can regenerate. I put a T there. Can you predict death? I don't think any astrologer who tells you when you're going to die, I'm sorry. That's just so easy. Sure, let's just plot out and it's all predicted and blah, 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 blah. I don't feel that's good. I do know that there are people who take what they call the Lord of the 8th house. It's an old saying, the ruler of your 8th house. So when you look at your chart, and I don't know if this chart has it, but if you look at your chart, yeah, you'll see, look at the green line in this little chart, and you'll see that this person, whoever this is, has Virgo rising, right? See the little sign for Virgo? There's a little M with the tail. That's the sign for Virgo. That's called the ruler. In the old days, they called it the Lord of the 8th, you know, of the house. So Virgo would be the Lord, or we might say the ruler of that. I've played around with, and there's a lot of work on this, that if you looked at the Lord of the 8th, the ruler of the 8th house, you can then look at how it's, you know, so say for instance, the Lord of the 8th house for this person's chart is Virgo. And then you would look at where is Vesta in the chart? What planets are connecting to Vesta? You know, what's the idea with Virgo? Well, Virgo, you know, deals with food and health, and you can extrapolate, you know, the type of death or the thing that this person might have to look out for. I've only sort of dabbled, you know, sort of studied here and there, pardon me, in that specific prediction part of death. I find it fascinating. I don't feel that I am qualified to do it professionally. It's one of those things I like to read on. But there are people who will do this. But many people are terrified of transits to the 8th house because of this connotation, excuse me, of death. But again, I look to the planet on the cusp if you want to get some clues. I don't really do it in a professional sense, but what I want to do is go deeper. So Pluto transits, as I said, Pluto lives in the 8th house. So when I say that, remember, your chart is different. It doesn't mean everybody has Pluto in the 8th, but Pluto, Scorpio vibrate to the energy of the 8th house. That's what I say, that's their happy place. You can, as I said, experience the death of a loved one. It could happen, right? This would be a time of doing it. But I would use it to empower yourself. I would use it to connect to that person that I want to do. So say, for instance, I want to connect with someone who's died. I want to connect with this person, and Pluto is now going through my 8th house. This would be the time to do this. This would be the time to connect. This would be the time to heal past karma. This would be the time to find out, what were the secrets of this relationship. So there's something that you could do here, but use it to change the relationship for better. Use this to empower yourself. Use this to say, how can I mend a relationship with someone who has gone ahead, right? And how can I fix it? Pluto transits are also ones that are personal empowerment, right? So not dealing with goods of the dead, not dealing with those who've gone beyond. Who is taking your power? What are your deepest fears? What is your sense of I am so mad, right? This person has been keeping me down. Why do I give up my power to someone? Why do I give up my authority to these people? I have a client going Pluto 8th house, and she's like, I am so tired of listening to people. And she had a very authoritarian husband, let's put it that way. She was married very young. She was someone who well, there's a lot there, but just kept giving her power to this guy over and over and over again. And finally, when this Pluto 8th house, she's like, no, this is how this marriage is going to continue, right? I have another client with a South Node Pluto Scorpio in the 8th house, gave up her power to several husbands and to people. And finally, she did some incredible past life work and found out that she was a very powerful person in previous lives, but she misused that power. And then she be pulled back. And this is why she's never allowed herself to use her power. So for lifetime after lifetime, she's been very, kind of giving up her power, afraid to use her power. And now she's re-empowering herself. So where are your power issues? What are your deepest fears? And how can you grab the reins again? Saturn is always about authority, right? There is responsibility. There may be duty when Saturn transits this, and duty to someone older, right? There may be someone who needs you to take care of them. But this is also the time to see whose drummer you're following. What is the tape in your head? What are you listening to in terms of what you should do and shouldn't do and pay homage to? Okay. The Saturn always says, find your authority. Where the heck is your authority? And the authority of Saturn comes from you. And that's the learning process. I'm going to regenerate myself out of these old ways of thinking and doing and being. And I'm going to take the authority. It's not power. Power is Pluto. You don't have the power to talk to me like that. But authority is, hey, I'm going to take my life in this direction. I'm going to take my life in that direction. Right? I'm not going to listen. It's a good time to say, maybe I don't have to do what my parents told me, or the lineage. If you come from a family or a tradition where the elders are always in charge and you do what they do and you live how they tell you to live, that is something that you can say, no, wait a minute, it's my life kind of thing. And that authority over money, particularly inheritances. I told you the client I had who just was not listening, and sometimes it is reminding you of your authority, of your mortality. So for instance, it's you may hear of someone who passes, or someone who said, oh, I always wanted to go to or do blah blah blah, but I didn't. And all right, I'll give you one example. I have several running through my head of someone who found out that someone who had always said, someday I'm going to, and this person then had a terrible accident and could never do this someday. That reminding of, hey, I need to get my stuff together. I'm running on the rat race wheel. I'm wasting too much time. And of course, I always say, look out when it comes to Uranus. Expect the unexpected and wait for the gifts. Watch for accidents, particularly if Mars is involved. I remember when, Princess Diana's accident happened, she had Uranus and Mars transiting the 8th house. Watch for accidents, watch for sudden financial loss, sudden financial gain through inheritances. This is a good time to come to terms with your stuff, right? So a sudden fire and you lose stuff that, I could never live without this stuff, or the sudden need to get rid of burdens. Right? I'm carrying around stuff, and it's not only physical stuff, it's also mental stuff. I'm carrying around these burdens. I'm carrying around this stuff that I should be getting rid of. I need, it's a jolt, it's a shock. It could even be, again, a sudden death of someone, down the street, like, I do need to get my stuff in order. I need to, sit back and pause a moment on how I connect with the idea of death, which again can tolerate people. There's also that power, can frighten people. There's also that power. Who just stabbed me in the back? I trusted this person, right? Oh, this person was never on my side? You mean they were just playing me? That stab in the back and the realization of my own empowerment. The sudden loss of a friend who was always going to look out for you. And then, boom, it wasn't. And then Neptune, again, water sign, water planet, in a water house, sharpen the intuitive gut. Do the medium work, do the ancestry work, do the psychic work, do the intuitive work, connect to the other side. This is all, deep reflection, meditation, all of this stuff. This is the time to dig into you, right? Your past, present, and future. What do you want to accomplish? Correct the karmic rights and wrongs. Connect to people in a way that is profound, meditative, connecting to the other side. And then don't forget the progressions. So this is why I got this wheel off the internet, but that little wheel on the inside is your birth chart. Then you have the secondary progression, which progresses the fast guys, Sun, Moon, up to Jupiter, not including Jupiter. And then you have the slow guys, Jupiter and beyond. That's the third wheel. Those two wheels in the middle there, those are internal shifts. Those are internal, like, it's not boom coming from the outside. It's, I feel something. So for instance, if you have Pluto progressed through there, so it would be in the third wheel in the 8th house, you don't have something coming from the outside. You don't have that person taking your power, but you might start thinking, maybe I do give up my power a little bit more. Maybe I need to mate. It's not a blunt, but it's a kind of a thinking kind of thing. So anyway, that's my walk through the 8th house. This is how you get in touch with me. If you have any questions, if you want your chart done. I hope I've imparted some information to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.